One dear lady named Tiffany, and $39 after paying her rent. She comes in. She's already told her kids, we're not going to have Christmas this year, and my kids are so understanding. She comes in for $39. She buys bicycles. And she is crying like crazy, saying, I can't believe people love like this.
Yeah.
And you see that happen, you realize we can partner together and God's kingdom can break out.
It's time for Pastor's Forum. Hi, I'm Byron Tyler. Glad to have you join us on this edition. Last week, we got together with Pastor Sam Shaw of The Orchard. We were talking about that ministry. It's been around about 4.5 years now, meeting at Briarcrest High School, Houston Levee Road. They just built a really nice facility there, Sam, so you've got a great location.
It is a world-class worship center. Actually, it's a fine arts center. We're really privileged to be there. And Briarcrest has been so good to work with. Folks have just bent over backwards. We feel like it's a really good partnership.
And you have places for nursery, too?
Oh, sure.
Church
we have what we call Orchard Kids, or preschool children. One of our core values, Byron, is family. We believe that parents are the primary disciplers of their children. So we said from the very beginning, we're going to build a ministry that actually equips parents to do that, to disciple their children. We have a good number of folks who come because their children absolutely demand that they come. They love what they're getting. And so they get all kinds of equipping taking place during the week being given to them. One of the things that we do is called First Steps. It's a child dedication, but it's a little bit different from what I've ever done. Parents attend a 1-hour class where they are given some instruction on biblical parenting in terms of shepherding your child spiritually, and then they are challenged to think forward, what do I want my child to be 20 years from now? Not do, but be, and write a prayer that reflects that. Then we have a night event, a meal, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles all gather around. They actually read that prayer to their children. There's tissue everywhere. People are crying. My daughter did that with our grandchild. Oh, my goodness. End result is afterwards, I have a real sense of my responsibility and my joy, and I'm being equipped to actually do that. So that's a part of what we want to do with children's ministry at our church.
I like that. Last time, something that you mentioned, I kind of want to pick back up on, something about the city. The city excites you, something that you wanted to be a part of. Moved to Tupelo, but you really felt like God wanted you back in a city like Memphis, which has one of the highest crime rates
Absolutely.
in any city in the country. You were in a nice little town of Tupelo. Why Memphis and why this city?
It was interesting. I told our church in Tupelo, I would read these statistics about Memphis, how terrible it was, and I would say, some of you ought to move to Memphis. This is where Christians ought to be. They ought to be where the things are the worst. The light shines the brightest. Little realizing that we would be the ones actually who hear that. We just challenged our church. This year, our theme is, this is my city. If something happens in Hickory Hill, somebody gets shot, or there's a child that doesn't have parents and there's not enough money to feed, I don't care about that. I don't weep with those who are weep. I don't rejoice with people who are ministries that are taking place. When good things happen, this is my city. And I prayed a few years ago. I didn't really like Memphis when we first moved here. It was so fragmented, so different, unique. I prayed and said, Lord, give me a love for the city. And he did. I love this city. I love what God is doing. I love the pockets of light, of life that there are. And I love what I see God doing in individuals and churches and business people all around the city. There's a lot of untold stories, people who are making a huge difference for the kingdom in our city.
They really are, Sam. And I see it. That's why I want to have a show like this
in
the Mid-South Viewpoint program to highlight that, because the 6 o'clock news, it talks about all the detriment and all the sadness and sickness
Absolutely.
in our city. But there's some wonderful things that God's up to in our city that we need to tell people about.
Absolutely.
But when you talk about that responsibility, taking it as a personal responsibility, I think we become very apathetic in many ways. We, as humans, we want our own comfort zone.
Absolutely. And we said, well, what can I do? When we moved back, one of the men in our church, a businessman, had some of his employees going over to Ross Elementary School and doing some work. So I said, can we piggyback on what you're doing? He said, well, sure. I walked in to the principal, Miss Smith, and met her and said, we're a new church. Is there anything we can do to help? And I think she was pretty skeptical at first. She said, well, this or that. And so we did that. And then we came back and said, is there anything else we can do to help? We just want to be a blessing. And she mentioned something else. And as a result, we have 4 years of officially being an adopted church for Ross Elementary. We just finished having what we call the toy store, where I challenged our folks, and we partner with 2 African-American churches primarily in the Hickory Hill area. all of us going together, bought brand new toys off Target, Amazon, Walmart, whatever, full price, took them to Ross Elementary School, and on a Saturday morning, drastically reduced the price, invited under-resourced parents to come in and buy toys for their children for Christmas. One dear lady named Tiffany, and $39 after paying her rent. She comes in. She's already told her kids, we're not going to have Christmas this year, and my kids are so understanding. She comes in, and for $39, she buys bicycles, she buys, and she is crying like crazy, saying, I can't believe people love like this.
Yeah.
And you see that happen, you realize we can partner together and God's kingdom can break out. But it's taken 4 years of demonstrating we really are serious. We don't care if our name is ever mentioned. We really do want to be God's hands and a blessing.
It's been said, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely.
We've heard that, but it's so very true. And I was just talking to a friend recently who is a friend of Steve Richardson. His father's, Don Richardson, wrote a book called The Peace Child. I think you've heard of this.
Sure.
Steve is that peace child. When his dad, Don, moved into the jungles, I guess, of South America to take the gospel to a savage, cannibalistic tribe, it was that child that they related to. They said, because you have brought your own family here and are doing life with us, we receive you.
They couldn't figure out, when he told the gospel story, when Don told that story, the people cheered for Judas. Because treachery is a core value of that particular tribe. I think it's in Papua New Guinea.
I think you're right, yeah.
But that he did find what he called a redemptive analogy, and that is something in the culture that God has placed there that reflects the gospel. And it was the fact that if I turn my child over to you and entrust my child to you, and I realized that's what God had done in sending Christ. Christ was the peace child, and Steve was the peace child in this. So people understood the gospel being lived out right in front of them.
And the similarity, we can do that today, right in here in our own community.
Yeah. Several of the folks who came to the toy store, as we called it, said, you must have the most loving church. Your people are so loving. I said, we talking about the same people? But it actually happened. One of the men told me, he said, we heard about this in church. I decided I would do it. And he said, I met with a woman who just came off of working 22 hours, living with her sister, and wanted to buy some presents for her sister's children for Christmas, who would not have Christmas at all. He said, I talked to this lady, I watched her, and he said, it wrecked me. There are people who really do want to help someone else. His own words, he allowed me to read it in church. He said, I will be the first one. I'll work 24 hours a day next time we do this.
Wow.
Touched his life. We think, well, I'm going to bless someone else. In reality, I'm the one who ends up getting blessed.
That's so true. And I was just thinking about those in our churches that engage these opportunities. I mean, it's so transformational in their own life.
Yeah, Jesus knew what he was talking about when he said there's more blessing in giving than in receiving.
What's the heartbeat for the ministry of the Orchard? What makes the Orchard the Orchard?
Our purpose statement is to equip believers to influence others toward Christ in their home, their neighborhood, their city, and their world. And I guess if there's one heartbeat that comes through over and over, it is we desire to see families healthy, growing, and see God's kingdom come in that way. Obviously, we're biblically committed. We're committed to the gospel, but we really want to see singles and families flourishing. That's so much of what we do, and we want to see that happen throughout the life of our city. We say, this is my church, this is my city, this is my commitment. This is where we're at.
Yeah.
And I want to invest my life here. And in the process, people get involved in each other's lives and begin to meet each other's needs. I got a call, could you come by the hospital and see somebody? And I went by, and the nurse said to me, she said, well, you hear about the 14th minister who's come by here. I said, and all these people, they didn't need me. They were ministering to each other. It was a beautiful thing.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
You and your family served as missionaries?
We were. We were in the Dominican Republic. Served there for 4 years. We were involved in a horrible automobile accident. We were airlifted out. All of my kids, I have 4 kids, all bones broken. My wife's right side was shattered. And in fact, on the airlift, her vital signs were lost twice. So we spent a year trying to recover and recuperate, trying to decide what do we do now. I served at a publishing house, helping to market a new version of the Bible in Spanish, but once again felt restless, just wanted to be in churches, leading, pastoring, preaching. God opened the opportunity, and we served in New Mexico for 5 years. Saw God move in an unbelievable way. Moved, served in Tulsa, served there 5 years, and then moved here, strongly feeling God's call to this area.
You were dedicated. Your family was serving Christ. Why is something so tragic and awful happen to you? Why does something so tragic happen to people that are trying to love God and do the right thing by God?
Well, the standard answer is we live in a fallen world. Obviously, that is true. Here's a quick story. When my wife was in the hospital, she was at Oral Roberts University in the hospital, the City of Faith, during that time that it operated. Tubes everywhere, really couldn't speak because of tubes down her throat and whatnot. And my daughter, Sarah, who was 8 years old, was brought to see her mommy by her granddaddy, my wife's father. And she was coached. Now, when you go in, you got to be happy. You can't be a downer with your mom. And she came in and she talked to my wife a few moments. My wife laying there in the bed looking at her. My daughter became real quiet, and a real insightful nurse said, "Honey, is there something you want to say to your mother?" And my daughter, Sarah, said, "Mommy, is Romans 8:28 true?" She had learned that verse, that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him. Is that true? And my wife nodded. Yeah, it's true. That's all she needed to hear. She went bebopping out of the room, just as happy. And we have staked our lives on the truth of that verse, that we have a sovereign God who is in charge of all things, and through good and bad, guiding us, sharpening us, refining us for his glory. We bet the farm on that.
Yeah. James, of course, said, count it all joy facing those trials, those various trials. And some of them are big and some of them are small.
That's an easy one to preach, and that's a hard one to live.
Live out, brother. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my. Well, what do you like personally best about pastoring the Orchard?
I love to see God at work in placing people in ministry. When I see ideas and ministries emerge from folks who are in the church and people begin involved in the lives of others, they're serving, they're sharing Christ, it is like pouring gasoline on my fire. I love to see what God is doing in the lives of people around me. That makes it a real joy to be a part of a new church. Someone said that the most effective means of evangelism known to man is church starting, that a new church will grow faster, reach more people for Christ. Not that that doesn't happen in established churches, but people are realizing in a new church, if I don't work, it's not going to be done. I'm needed here. At least that's been our experience.
Isn't it exciting, too, Sam, for you to see as pastor that, as you said, this flame that's burning inside you is being replicated in those around you? They're getting excited for the cause.
The great joy that I have because of how old I am, educated back after the rocks begin to cool. There are young men in ministry, group of young guys in our church, I call them the young guns, that I have the privilege of investing my life in. We're really about the next generation in our church. And so several times a week, I'm meeting with groups of guys in Bible studies, just doing what I can to mentor them. One of the guys on our staff came to me and he said, "I want everything you know." And once again, it was like pouring gasoline on the fire. Just absolutely. Are you kidding? Yeah.
Wow. Sam Shaw, this has been great for these past 2 weeks. Thank you, my dear brother, for what you're doing for Christ's kingdom. If folks want more information about the Orchard, what's that website?
orchardfellowship.org.
2 campuses now that you're meeting at?
Right. We meet over at Briarcrest on Houston Levee, 9 and 10:45, and a lot of action taking place at St. George's as well.
All right. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks.
Friends, that's all the time we have on this week's Pastors Forum. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.